Hi guys, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to natural family planning, also known as NFP for short. As I mentioned in the last video, we are called to have a generous and life-giving marriage, often in the form of welcoming children into the fold. However, this does not mean that the church isn't realistic or understanding about our capabilities as parents. Being open to life doesn't mean that we need to have as many children as humanly possible, regardless of our circumstances. Rather, it means that we are invited to cooperate with God when it comes to making our family planning decisions, and trust that He truly knows what's best for us. In His infinite wisdom, then, He has designed women to be fertile only on certain days of the month, which means that during the rest of the time, women are infertile. God has also made it possible for us to discover through science what those fertile and infertile days are. NFP, then, is a way to plan for our family and space our children through the awareness of the woman's fertile and infertile phases in her reproductive cycle. Now, there are a lot of NFP methods that you can follow. You may have heard of the Billings ovulation method, the Creighton or Napier technology method, the Serena method, and the Marquette method. There are ovulation and fertility kits that you can purchase, and there's also an increasing number of reliable apps that you can use. Science and technology have truly advanced for our benefit here. All of these methods vary in certain ways, mostly in the use of them, but they are all based on the same underlying science. So what I want to do today is to give you a brief overview of the science behind NFP. And here I am going to use mostly information gathered from the Billings method, since I'm the most familiar with that particular method. And then I will share links to the various methods so that you can check them out at your leisure. I will say right now that most methods are highly reliable and practical to use with a 98% success rate. And that's when you learn it well and you use it well. Okay, so let's start with a brief lesson on reproduction. We will focus on the woman's reproductive cycle, as she's the one with the most variation. With men, it's pretty simple. Men become fertile once they hit puberty and stay fertile until the day they die. I do, however, want to emphasize that this is about the couple's fertility and not just the woman's. After all, it takes two to make a baby. So I always recommend that the couple learn the method together and practice it together. So I've got an illustration here with the woman's reproductive or menstrual cycle, and this will make much more sense to you if you have a visual to guide you. Now, every woman's menstrual cycle varies in length and hormonal levels, but for the purposes of this explanation, you could say that this chart or this graph is a textbook perfect cycle. So, there are four main phases in the woman's reproductive cycle. The first one is menstruation or days of bleeding, and that's usually 3 to 5 days long. That's followed by what I call the prefertile phase, which is infertile, and that phase is irregular in length. It can vary from 0 days long to n number of days. That's followed by the fertile phase, which is about 4 to 7 days long. And then finally, we have the post-fertile phase, also known as the luteal phase, which is 11 to 16 days long in length. So during the woman's reproductive cycle, the woman's fertile phase, which is really what we want to focus on, certain reproductive hormones, primarily estrogen, which is the yellow line in this graph, begins to rise in preparation for ovulation, which is the point of release of one or more eggs. As estrogen rises, it sends a message to the cervix, which is the gateway from the vagina into the uterus, to release a special type of secretion or mucus, which then falls to the outside of the woman's body. This cervical mucus can both be seen and felt by the woman during this particular phase in her cycle. The mucus follows the progressive rise of estrogen by changing both in quantity and quality until estrogen reaches its peak level. Again, these changes can be observed by the woman. To illustrate, when estrogen is at a low level, the secretions can be dry, sticky, and yellow. As estrogen rises, the secretions gradually change to become more watery in texture and clear in color. So we will go from yellow to white to cloudy to clear. When estrogen hits its highest point, called the peak day, the secretions become slippery, plentiful, and often appear as long, clear strings. This peak day lets the woman know that ovulation is imminent. The egg or eggs will be released within 12 to 24 hours of the peak day. Once the peak has occurred, estrogen drops dramatically and the secretions disappear. You can see this sharp drop in this diagram. The woman will note this herself when she goes back to feeling dry. Then there are 3 days after the peak day that we call the days of ovulation, and we treat these as potentially fertile days. It's been scientifically proven that a woman can get pregnant up to 3 days past her peak day, and that on the 4th day, she is no longer fertile. Then the balance of her cycle until the start of a new cycle is infertile. It's important to note that the woman's fertile phase begins at the point that estrogen begins its rise in preparation for ovulation, which is usually 2 to 4 days before the actual ovulation. And then it continues for 3 days following her peak day. This means that if the couple were to have sexual intercourse at any point during this fertile phase, they could potentially become pregnant. Why is the woman potentially fertile days before she ovulates? The answer lies in the presence of the cervical mucus. And remember that the cervical mucus becomes present as soon as estrogen begins to rise in preparation for ovulation. Research has shown that when the cervical mucus isn't present, such as during the infertile phases, the woman can't get pregnant. This is because in the absence of the mucus, the sperm doesn't survive long enough in the woman's body to reach the egg if the egg were present. The hostile environment of the vagina quickly kills off the sperm. However, when the cervical mucus is present, it envelops the sperm, protecting, nourishing, and promoting the very best towards the egg, in the hopes that conception takes place. So, when the mucus is not present, the sperm only lasts about 30 minutes to 2 hours in the woman's body, which has been shown to not be long enough to reach the location of the released egg. However, when the mucus is present, the sperm will last 3 to 5 days in the woman's body, which means that if you have intercourse on the first day of the fertile phase when the secretions appear, the sperm will happily wait for the egg to be released some days later. Pretty cool, right? Now, why is the woman potentially fertile for 3 days after her peak day? So this is made to allow for the lifespan of the egg or eggs which are released. The woman will ovulate 12 to 24 hours before or after her peak day. So, to err on the side of caution, let's say that she ovulates the day after her peak day. Sometimes she will release more than one egg, and this can happen within 12 to 24 hours of each other. So we allow a second day for the possibility of more than one egg being released. Finally, we allow for the lifespan of the egg, which is about a day after it's been released. That's day 3. We know for sure that on the 4th day following the peak day, the egg has either been fertilized or it has disintegrated back into the body, so conception is no longer possible. Phew, are you guys still with me? This is a lot of information to digest, I know. So I thank you for hanging in there. So now you know how to tell when a woman is fertile or infertile. The next step, if you're interested in learning the NFP method, is to check out any of the links that I will send to you and book an appointment with an instructor to learn your chosen method. The instructor will teach you about the specifics of the method, such as how to become aware of your fertility, how to chart your cycles, how to recognize each of the phases in your cycle, and what the rules are to follow if you're planning to either achieve or postpone a pregnancy. If you happen to have an irregular cycle, and many women do, then the instructor will make sure that the method is adapted to your specific situation. Once you know this information, then you can make your family planning decisions for years to come. The learning curve is about 6 months long. And while it does take a bit of time to get your bearings, I can tell you that we have successfully used NFP during our marriage to both achieve and postpone pregnancies, and that it is a practical method for busy people like us. It's not burdensome or particularly difficult. I would say that the most difficult thing has been to switch from an anti-kid mentality where we have been trained to believe that we need to protect ourselves from the scariness of children through contraceptives. Once we got over this hump, I can't tell you how freeing it has been to have agency over our family planning decisions without sacrificing my health, knowing that we can always change our minds while at the same time enjoying the fullness of our sexual relationship. Having said that, I would say that NFP is definitely a lifestyle and not to be used as a Catholic contraceptive. It is best embraced when lived with a pro-family and pro-child mindset, which happens to be the best mindset for a happy marriage. It's not always easy, and sometimes it's downright inconvenient. I mean, for those seasons where you need to postpone welcoming a child for a serious reason, it means that you have to abstain during the fertile days, which kind of sucks because the fertile days happen to be the days with the highest level of desire. I guess because God really loves babies. So it requires the virtues of patience, sacrifice, obedience, and self-giving. These are not easy virtues to develop, but rest assured that if you've developed these virtues, they will definitely strengthen both your person and your marriage. NFP has other amazing benefits, and these we have experienced firsthand. For example, it has allowed us to experience the wonder of creation, the active participation of God in our marriage, while at the same time, it has empowered us with the ability to plan for our families based on our circumstances. This is in God's plan. It has allowed us to see that our fertility is a precious and fragile gift. And we view it as such and not as the enemy which must be attacked or feared or subdued. It has allowed for the renewal of our intimate life through its regular cycles of abstinence and enjoyment. This part I have enjoyed very much. I'm sure you've heard that it can be a challenge to keep the passion alive as the years go by, and that's a thing for sure. Keeping the flame alive takes effort. But having to abstain for a week or so definitely amps up your desire for one another, and we have found this to be key in a satisfying sex life. Too bad Cosmo doesn't talk about this. NFP has also allowed for the shared responsibility of our sexual lives and openness to life. When you use contraceptives, it mostly falls to the woman, and then she becomes the sexual gatekeeper of your sexual life, and that can wear on the relationship. With NFP, we have to continually communicate to be on the same page, to make sure that we're on the same page, and to discuss where we're at with our family planning decisions. Sometimes, if you're on contraceptives for an indefinite period of time, you may not think to have these important discussions until too much time has gone by, and next thing you know, the time for childbearing is over. I have seen this happen quite a few times. Speaking of communication, talking about sex is something that is often awkward and avoided at all costs. But if you can master the art of communicating to each other about your sexual needs and concerns, you'll most likely be able to communicate well in all the other areas of your life. So much pain can be avoided if we could just learn how to communicate well. Another benefit of NFP is that women get to learn so much about themselves and their bodies, and husbands gain knowledge, respect, understanding, and awe about all the changes that their wives go through. NFP also serves as a great diagnostic tool. If you know what your healthy signs are, you will be quick to catch on to the unhealthy signs and see your doctor that much sooner. Finally, NFP is highly reliable, just as the most reliable contraceptives out there, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, I could go on and on about NFP, but I hope that I have highlighted enough things about it so that you will now want to take the next step and learn how to use it in your marriage. I want to end this video by telling you that there is a time for using NFP, as much as I love it, but there's also a time for chucking it out the window. What I mean is that the best use of NFP is to use it when you have a serious reason to postpone a pregnancy. It could be a health issue, or right after you have a baby and you'd like to wait a few years for the next one, or you have some serious financial difficulties, etc. It's also great to use NFP if you're struggling to conceive. There's about an 80 to 85% success rate in helping infertile couples achieve a pregnancy. We were one of those couples many years ago. But any other time, I would highly suggest that you forget all about NFP and all about charting and just enjoy each other, love each other whenever you want to, have Jesus take the wheel, and revel in the dream of your love potentially resulting in a new life. This is a beautiful way to live out your marriage. Be not afraid. Sometimes we like to plan and control things to death. I know I do. But the best results are the ones when we get out of our own way and simply allow God to work His wonders in us. It's not the easiest path, but it's certainly the best one. Okay, I think this is a good place to stop this video. Next time, I will cover some of the negative consequences with contraceptives. See you guys then.